Jack Porter sought peace in an old mansion, but what he discovered in its walls were racist secrets that could destroy his life. The house held a terrifying truth that would forever change his family. What he did next will shock even the most jaded. But let's start from the beginning. Millionaire Jack Porter was a man who seemed to have it all: wealth, power, and influence. He had built his empire from scratch, starting with a few smart real estate investments and gradually transforming them into a multi-million-dollar business. Yet behind this facade of success, something far more complex was brewing. The deeper Jack got into business, the less time he had for his personal life. He lost close connections with his family, grew distant from friends, and became entangled in the endless schemes of his business partners, all of whom were eager to grab a piece of his fortune. By the time Jack turned 50, he realized his life had become nothing more than a series of deals, meetings, and negotiations. Everything that truly mattered, inner peace, harmony, love, had been lost in the pursuit of money. And so, on one ordinary workday, when yet another deal nearly collapsed due to a close partner's betrayal, Jack decided it was time for a change. He needed a break, a place to escape from the world and re-evaluate his life. That's when this house appeared on his radar. A massive old mansion, shrouded by ancient trees, sat on the outskirts of New York. The house seemed to embody the peace and grandeur Jack longed for. It had been abandoned for years, and the previous owners had left without much explanation. It towered over the surrounding buildings like something from another era. Its ivy-covered brick walls appeared strong and unyielding, as though time itself was powerless against them. This place promised the seclusion Jack so desperately sought. When he first saw the house, he felt like he had found what he had been searching for his whole life. The vast stained glass windows, marble columns, and expansive rooms commanded respect. Here, he could hide away from a world that had not let him rest for so long. No nosy journalists, cunning competitors, or even old friends would be able to find him here. However, beneath its outward beauty, the house held dark secrets. Neighbors spoke of mysterious disappearances of previous owners and strange noises that echoed through the night. Legends swirled around the mansion. Some said a family once lived there that had lost everything due to a curse placed on the house. Others claimed there were vast treasures hidden within its walls, but anyone who tried to find them either disappeared or went mad. Jack, however, was a skeptic. He had grown up in a world that only believed in money and contracts, not in mysticism or rumors. To him, this house was merely a good deal, a perfect opportunity to hide from the world and regain his strength. The stories about whispers, ghosts, and mysterious vanishings seemed like nothing more than silly tales made up by superstitious people with too much time on their hands. Yet despite his confidence, Jack couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something more lay behind the house's calm exterior. Some inexplicable force drew him to this place, as if calling him to uncover secrets long hidden. Deep down, he knew this house would change his life. Perhaps it would be here that he found the answers to the questions that had plagued him all these years. Several weeks passed after Jack settled into his new home. The first few days were filled with the peace and quiet he had craved. It seemed the mansion had become a true refuge, shielding him from the outside world with all its endless conflicts and problems. Jack enjoyed every moment, strolling through the vast rooms and courtyards, which seemed to come alive only because of his presence. But after some time, he began to notice strange things. At first, it was minor details that could easily be explained by the house's age. Faint creaks in the floorboards, quiet noises at night that could have been the wind blowing through cracks in the windows. Jack didn't think much of it, knowing the house hadn't been maintained for years and needed attention. But one day, while walking through the living room, his eye caught on one of the walls. An ordinary wooden panel appeared slightly raised, as though something was hidden behind it. Jack wasn't one to give in to curiosity easily, but something about this small irregularity in the otherwise perfect surface of the wall nagged at him. He stood before the panel for a long time, trying to figure out what was drawing him to it. It was a feeling like intuition. Something told him that there was more behind this wall. Without much thought, he grabbed tools left behind by a worker who had done minor repairs, and carefully began prying open the wooden panel. The panel came off surprisingly easily, and soon a small recess in the wall was revealed. Inside was an old leather chest, its surface adorned with faded golden designs, and an elaborate monogram that seemed to be centuries old. Jack froze for a moment, astonished by the discovery. He had expected to find anything behind the wall, wiring, old furniture, or just dust, but certainly not a chest that looked like it belonged to an aristocrat from the 19th century. The air around him seemed to be filled with an ancient mystery, as if the house itself was steeped in history, just waiting to be uncovered. Opening the chest, Jack found a pile of old documents, letters, and notes. The yellowed pages told the story of the house and its past inhabitants. Among the papers were antique jewelry, pearl earrings, diamond rings, and heavy gold chains adorned with intricate stones. But none of this treasure captivated Jack's attention as much as one letter lying in the center of the chest. The letter, written in a beautiful but faded hand, was dated late 19th century. Jack opened it and began reading, each line pulling him deeper into a dark and mysterious history. The letter spoke of strange rituals that had been conducted in the house generations ago. The author described a secret ceremony supposedly performed by his ancestors in the basement of the mansion. According to the letter, this ritual was meant to summon immense wealth for those brave enough to undergo a series of trials hidden within the mansion's walls. Jack, being a pragmatic man, didn't immediately take it seriously. He was convinced it was just an old legend or fantasy that had consumed the minds of previous owners. Who in their right mind could believe that some ritual could bring wealth? For someone who had built his fortune from nothing, such stories seemed utterly absurd. However, one thing in the letter caught his attention. The letter was accompanied by a small map. It showed the location of hidden rooms and passages in the house, ones Jack hadn't known existed. The map led to the basement, a part of the house he had yet to explore. Jack's latent thirst for adventure and discovery awoke. Now, he couldn't think of anything else but the map and the potential treasures hidden beneath his feet. These thoughts haunted him. The longer he studied the letter and the map, the more he felt like he was on the verge of something extraordinary. Although his rational mind told him it was all just a myth, his intuition pulled him forward, urging him to uncover what lay hidden. Jack stared at the map for a long time, almost mesmerized, unable to believe the house held even more mysteries. But the adventurer within him couldn't be stopped now. The map led him to the basement, the darkest, oldest part of the mansion, untouched by human hands since its construction. Armed with a flashlight and his thoughts, Jack descended the narrow spiral staircase into the musty, dust-covered basement. As he reached the bottom, the damp scent of old stones, untouched by light for centuries, filled his nostrils. The basement was much larger than he had anticipated. Huge, rough stone walls and massive wooden beams created a sense of something ancient and immovable. Layers of dust covered the floors and ceilings, making it clear this place had been long forgotten, as if it was intentionally hidden from the world. Making his way through thick cobwebs and dust-covered archways, Jack finally stumbled upon what he had been searching for. In the far corner of the basement, behind a pile of old wooden crates and scrap metal, was a safe. A massive iron box, rusted and grimy. It looked like it had been there since the house's very inception. The safe's lid was adorned with intricate engravings, and faintly visible through the rust were the words, "Only one who sacrifices what they value most will find true wealth." The inscription left Jack puzzled. He stood before the safe, pondering the meaning of those cryptic words. Glancing at the engraving once more, he realized he had never really considered what they value most truly meant to him. His entire life had been devoted to accumulation. Jack was someone who always chose material wealth, business success, and power, neglecting everything else: friendship, love, and family ties. To him, wealth was only measured by money. The more, the better. But now, he faced a choice that challenged his entire value system. How could a safe in an old house influence his internal struggle? He was a man who had always acted logically, making decisions based on profit and calculation. But the inscription made him think not about financial well-being, but about something much more important, something he had missed his entire life. At first, Jack treated it as just another element of the mysterious ritual, an old riddle meant to confuse those seeking the hidden treasures. But the longer he stared at those words, the more he began to understand that the wealth in question wasn't gold or money. Memories Jack had long tried to escape began to surface. His wife, Elizabeth, with whom he had been married for nearly 20 years, had barely spoken to him lately. They had become strangers living under the same roof, each consumed by their own affairs and concerns. Jack had immersed himself in his financial projects, while Elizabeth had focused on charity work and raising their children, with whom Jack also had strained relationships. He knew all the family's issues stemmed from his obsession with money and career, but he had never wanted to admit it. Now, standing before the safe, for the first time in his life, Jack wondered, what if his wealth, his true value, lay not in millions, but in the people he had long pushed away? The thought crossed his mind. Perhaps what he valued most, what he needed to give up, was his control over everything. His constant drive to hold everything in his hands, money, power, the fates of others. The realization washed over him like a wave. To open the safe, he had to make the hardest decision of his life, to relinquish control over what he valued most, his financial assets. He needed to hand over control of his wealth, companies, and property to his wife and children, finally giving them the freedom they had long deserved. The decision was incredibly difficult for him. After all, money had been the meaning of his entire life. But Jack understood that if he didn't take this step, not only would he never find the true wealth the inscription spoke of, but he would lose everything that really mattered. With a heavy heart but a sense of inner liberation, Jack contacted his lawyers and began the process of transferring his assets to his family. He knew this step would change his life forever. Several long days passed since Jack Porter made his hardest decision. He had signed all the papers, transferring control of his companies, assets, and vast fortune to his wife Elizabeth and their children. This decision was more than just a legal act. It was an act of internal freedom. Jack felt the tension that had built up over the years begin to release. He had expected that losing control of his wealth would make him feel fear or anxiety, but instead, he felt relief. Once all the formalities were settled, he returned to the basement where the ancient safe awaited him. That iron box, covered in rust and centuries of dust, was no longer just an antique item. It had become a symbol of his internal journey, a journey that had led him to realize that life wasn't about money and power. The circumstances had transformed the safe into something greater, a gateway to a new understanding of what truly mattered. Jack stood before the safe, his heart racing. He knew this moment would be the culmination of all the changes that had taken place within him over the past days. Finally, with a loud metallic creak, the safe began to open. Jack even held his breath for a moment, expecting to see treasures inside. Perhaps gold, precious gems, ancient artifacts, or something equally material. After all, the safe was connected to rituals, mysteries, and the trials he had just overcome. But when the lid fully opened, there was no gold, no diamonds, and no valuable antiques inside. Instead, he found only a small, neatly folded note lying in the center of the empty safe. For a moment, Jack froze, unsure of what was happening. This was not the ending he had anticipated, but something inside him compelled him to pick up the paper. He unfolded it and saw a simple message: "You have found what cannot be bought." These words hit him deeply. Jack was a man who had spent his life measuring success in money, wealth, and power. For him, every step, every deal, every earned million had been proof of his ability to win. But now he stood before a truth he couldn't deny. True wealth wasn't held in bank accounts or assets, but in something money could never buy, in harmony with oneself and with loved ones. Jack felt those words deeply penetrate his heart. He thought of his family, his wife Elizabeth, with whom he had once been so close, but had lost because of his obsession with career and wealth. He thought of his children, whom he had only seen in passing between business meetings and trips. All this time, He had believed that wealth could compensate for his absence in their lives, but now he understood that his true treasure was the love and support of those who had been by his side all along. Jack's life was transformed. Instead of planning how to grow his capital and expand his business, he began to rebuild his relationships with his family. The first step was the hardest. He returned home to his wife and children, admitted his mistakes, and tried to start over. Elizabeth, though initially skeptical, sensed that this Jack standing before her was no longer the man who lived only for money. Slowly but surely, their relationship began to heal. His children, who he had nearly lost, rediscovered a father who was now ready to listen and support them. Instead of talking about financial metrics and investments, Jack began to take an interest in their lives, their passions, and dreams. The entire world that had once seemed so important, financial markets, business meetings, and contracts, now took a back seat. Jack had found something that no millions could ever buy: peace with himself and those who truly mattered. His sacrifice, giving up control over his finances, had given him something far more valuable. Looking back, he realized that he would have lost much more if he had continued living the way he had been. He would have lost his family, his children, his soul. And though his fortune was now in the hands of others, Jack had gained a sense of inner peace he had never known before. Thus, Jack Porter, a man who once thought wealth was measured only in money, found the impossible treasure. The wealth that lies not in numbers on a bank statement, but in love, reconciliation, and harmony with oneself.